I'll begin with a story. Pablo Picasso was sketching outside a cafe in Paris. A woman spotted him, asked him to sketch her portrait. He agreed. In minutes, the woman was depicted in an original Picasso. And when she asked what she owed him, Picasso said 5,000 francs, and that was a lot of money. Surprised, the woman said, "But it only took you 3 minutes." "No," Picasso said, "it took me all my life." Now, usually this story is told to make some point about pricing or the value of art or design. It's told to encourage designers who lack confidence that it's okay to charge a higher fee for their design work. To me, however, it's not about the money. It's not about what a sketch is worth. You charge whatever you want for what you do. The question I want you to consider is, what is your most valuable 3-minute sketch? What do you visualize as a designer to help somebody see more clearly their world and their place in it? I really believe in the power of a 3-minute sketch. As UX designers, we don't have to be great artists like Picasso. I'm certainly not. I can draw stick figures, but you don't want me attempting to sketch your portrait. But we do need to be able to visualize ideas quickly. And just getting in front of a whiteboard or a piece of paper with someone for 3 minutes, a designer can make an enormous impact, no matter how rough the sketch. It's an almost magical thing we can do that people in other disciplines are often reluctant to do, or just don't think to do. We visualize concepts by sketching them. So, what's your most valuable 3-minute sketch? And let me refine the question just a bit. I'm going to talk about user experience strategy today, so I aim to give you perhaps a new way to answer this question. What's your most valuable UX strategy 3-minute sketch? That is, if you've got 3 minutes time to communicate something about user-centered design or an approach to human-centered design to a busy corporate executive, and let's be realistic, you're lucky if you get 3 minutes of their time, what will you draw? How will you frame the discussion? And let's make the question even more focused. Let's put this in an enterprise context. In about the next 40 minutes or so, I aim to equip you with something you can draw in 3 minutes or less to frame up an approach to user experience strategy for a large organization. And this is something you can put in front of a CEO or a CFO or a senior vice president or some other high-level leader and help them gain a new perspective on the design practice in their enterprise, perhaps even in the enterprise where you work. Before I go any further, however, I'll introduce myself. I'm Ben Judy. I've worked in a number of organizations as a designer. Early in my career, I worked at some startups and a marketing agency. Mostly, though, I've done UX work within big corporate enterprises with thousands of employees. Now, currently, I'm on a new career adventure as a consultant, leading the design consulting practice for Saxony Partners. And you can learn all about us at saxonypartners.com. And I've had different job titles under the UX umbrella. These make me laugh. It's not as though what I did for each of these organizations was dramatically different, and yet my resume contains this alphabet soup of UX, IA, UI, XD, etc. Mostly now, I just tell people I do human-centered design. I design for people, and I often practice user-centered or human-centered design methodologies. I've been a UX team of one. I've been a contributor, a member of design teams of varying sizes. I've managed small design teams, and now I'm in a management position again, also working as a consultant to enterprise clients. And the reason I tell you all of this is to get to this point. As I look across my professional career, which began before Y2K, I see a trend. It's a trend that some of you may recognize. It's a trajectory from executional design work toward a more strategic realm. Like so many of my UX colleagues who have done product design and service design for some number of years, eventually I found myself becoming a strategist. The work I do, the work I find that I want to do, is more strategic now. Okay, I keep using that word strategic. What do I mean by strategic? It's a fuzzy word, isn't it? It can mean a lot of different things, especially to designers. I'll quickly show you 3 frameworks I like to reference. And by taking these 3 ideas together and examining them side by side, we can sort of begin to dive deeper into this area of UX strategy, as I like to say, at different altitudes. First, a familiar framework for organizing design projects. The infamous double diamond model. Peter Merholtz is great at articulating this. There's strategic work up front, and executional design work follows. So you start with a strategy phase. In practical terms, this model is great for making sure you don't put the cart before the horse. That is, if followed properly, it will keep you from jumping straight to solution design, creating design mockups and prototypes, etc., before you've gained an understanding of who you're serving, what their needs are, and why you need to design anything in the first place. It doesn't mean you don't do those solution design activities, you just begin doing them more strategically at first for the purposes of discovery and problem definition before you actually hand over designs to a product engineer, for example, to build a specific solution. Discover and define the problem space before you start designing solutions. That's the gist of it. Many times I've made a diagram like this on a big board with sticky notes, or something like this in digital form for a design project. Because I believe, as crazy as this sounds, I believe that design work goes best when our design activities follow a plan that looks and feels designed to deliver outcomes. I'm a designer. I'm not a fan of chaos or ambiguity. Imagine that. But that's the first framework, the double diamond model. Strategy before execution in human-centered design at the level of product design. A second framework for beginning to think about UX strategy is from Eric Flowers and Megan Miller. They talk about service design, and there's this great metaphor that they use. Think about a theater, like a Broadway theater. In front of the stage is the audience, or you could think of them as customers. But there's this whole other world behind the stage where the crew is putting on the show. You could think of them as the service provider. And back there behind the stage, you identify strategic vision work to be done within the organization providing the service. We'll come back to this metaphor later, but it's another way to think about design strategy. A lot of it is behind the scenes. It's not what the user or the customer sees or experiences, but it definitely influences the experiences that they have. Now, a third framework is another one that should be familiar to you if you've been reading about design for a long time. Dr. Richard Buchanan's 4 orders of design: symbols, things, actions, and thoughts. Buchanan defines his third order actions as the design of activities and organized services, and he mentions strategic planning in this realm. And the fourth order includes the design of complex systems such as organizations, the social structures that we live and work in. Reading Buchanan, I see another way to define design strategy as a repositioning of our design skills, taking our aptitude in things like graphic design and product design, and applying design thinking to more abstract concerns, the design of corporate actions and thoughts. Now, this can get maybe too academic really quickly, but I think this is really what design strategy in the enterprise is all about. And Buchanan says that's a place designers should operate. We should have a lot to say in this realm. So I look across all 3 of these concept models, and I think you have a pretty good basis for a tiered approach to understanding experience design strategy. We have models and processes for product design that tell us to be strategic about understanding human needs and goals before we design solutions. The double diamond model is one example of that. At a higher level, you have the design of companies, enterprises, other types of organizations. And more we see people talking about this. Books like The Rise of the DEO and Org Design for Design Orgs are giving us perspectives on a new era of corporate leadership that is focused on human-centered design. And we have new staffing models emerging that put designers in a position of partnering with cross-functional teams and even directing their efforts, rather than taking a back seat and following processes defined by other disciplines. And we have to, as Bob Baxley puts it, we have to design the machine that designs the designs. Right? That happens at that company level. And then you start to bleed into this still higher level that I'm labeling purpose. Some of the high concept stuff that Buchanan and others have talked about, how designers can shape society and industries and extend our influence. So I look across these various concept models, and thinking about strategy at these different altitudes is a big part of the transition from designer to design leader. And that's the transformation that happens for many of us in the design industry as we progress in our careers. Now, at this point, I want to give you a case study of UX strategy in action. I've told this story at conferences in the past. I'll just give you a quick version of the case study today. If you want a longer story, you can find videos of my other talks at benjudy.com. But here's the TLDR version. I was part of a new experience design team at Intuit, and this new design team was formed within a business unit that at the time was named the Pro Tax Group. We created this concept we called mission-based UX strategy. It was centered around 3 customer benefits for professional tax preparers and accounting firms. That's who we design software for. Many of you in the United States are likely getting your taxes done about now, or you will be in the next few weeks. If you go to an independent tax preparer, they might well be using some of the software that I worked on. But these 3 missions that we had were to help them eliminate wasted time, grow their practice, and make a difference in the lives of their taxpayer clients. So this is a retrospective on my journey into the realm of UX strategy in that context. I'm looking back and analyzing where our mission-based strategy worked well and what I wish we had done differently in hindsight. And I'm going to emphasize the things that we didn't do so well simply because we learn the most from our failures, don't we? This is about lessons learned. And going back to that framework I just introduced, I'd like to frame my retrospective by looking at those different layers or altitudes of UX strategy: product, company, and purpose. So hop into my hot air balloon of UX strategy and we'll go for a ride. Let's begin with the product altitude. There were really a few positive outcomes here from our attempt at a mission-based strategy. First, organizing our efforts around 3 core customer benefits allowed us to develop project-specific design principles. So we had a set of 3 meta principles, this permanent foundation on which to build more specific and ephemeral guidance for each design project. And that was really helpful. Also, the 3 missions gave us a good starting point for success metrics. At the start of a new project, we'd ask, how are we going to measure the success of our new software product design? Well, as a starting point, we could gather benchmark data related to the missions, and we could go from there. Is the design helping tax professionals save time, grow their practice, and make a difference? Asking those questions gave us something to measure, something to aim at that was sort of universal across all of our product design projects. Also, internal design reviews became a little more focused. If you've ever had the experience of presenting design work to business leaders, and we did this regularly, you never really know where their heads are at or what they might choose to focus on. We found it helpful to sort of guide and direct the attention of our leaders and stakeholders to focus on the missions. And consistently parsing their feedback through this lens was often helpful in separating signal from the noise. Sometimes you get a lot of, I don't like the color of that button, or can you make the logo bigger? That kind of opinion-based surface-level feedback isn't very helpful to user experience designers. So training leaders to expect that, hey, every time we do a design review, we're going to start with these 3 user-centered objectives. That made review time more focused and more effective. So I quickly just rattled off 3 good side effects or outcomes of mission-based or customer benefit-based strategy at the product level. Now I want to talk about a lesson that I learned the hard way. As our new design team was coming together, I wrestled with the relationship between strategy and design process. I'm talking about methodology, the sequencing of design activities and deliverables. And at one point I thought, design methods are tactics. They're important, but they're not really strategic. But now, I think your design strategy can play an important role in helping your chosen process be a meaningful thing, and we missed that. Let me explain what I mean. Again, at this product level of strategy, my go-to framework is the double diamond model. But at the start of my projects on this new design team, I was often frustrated in my attempts to get product teams to use this process. It was kind of like, process? We don't need no stinking process. Why are you always talking about design process? Give it a rest. I would ask product teams to consider, is the double diamond the right approach, or should we practice lean UX or some other specific methodology? Oh, the product engineering teams are agile. You're doing Scrum. That's cool. Let's talk about how a design process can work in parallel with that software development process. And it felt like very few people really cared. And so I would hold up our three missions and I would say, guys, if we're going to deliver these customer benefits, we got to do all the things in the right way. This isn't going to happen by accident. We have to follow a proven design process to get these desired results. But in retrospect, I see the flaw in that approach because the one didn't really lead to the other. Follow me here. Everybody in the organization agreed with the missions. Save time, grow your practice, make a difference. Yeah, we're all about doing that for our customers. But as a basis for a strategic approach to product design, those customer benefits didn't explicitly make the case for why the whole cross-functional product team should do this design activity now and not this activity. For example, discover user needs before designing the interface. There just wasn't any connective tissue between the strategy for our design department and the process that I wanted to use for project design. And this is the perfect time for me to pull out my favorite quote about strategy. It's from Michael Porter, the famous Harvard business guy. I love the simplicity of this. The essence of strategy is choosing what not to do. What we had with the three customer benefits was a solid focus on customer needs. What we lacked was a strategic message that clearly indicated the need for being careful and intentional with design process. Because if we worked the process the right way, it would give us the answer for what to do and what not to do as we executed design projects. As Porter says, that's the essence of strategy, choosing what not to do. Now that's something I'm taking with me for the rest of my career. So I've become a firm believer that process is at least as important to design strategy as methods. Here's the thing about UX folks. If you don't know this, you need to know this. Simply adding UX methods to a product development process will not deliver good user experiences. Let me say that again. Sprinkling in a little user research, some empathy mapping, some wireframing, some prototyping into Scrum or some other agile processes, or even a waterfall process for that matter, that does not guarantee you're going to deliver a good user experience to your customers. You're fooling yourself if you think it does. Your strategic approach to product UX design has to answer this question. What's the right design activity to do today? And what's not the right thing to do because it's not the right time or it won't get us where we need to be. Product design strategy has to be really practical in that sense. Clear lines need to be drawn from the strategy to what the team is doing today, and we missed that. So I've talked about the product level. Let's rise up in altitude a little bit and look at this from a company or organizational perspective. And I've got 3 points here. First, we thought we were pretty clever. We derived our mission-based strategy, the 3 customer benefits, from our business strategy. Our business unit vision statement was bring the power of time and money to accountants and their clients so they may prosper. That was the language that our software business leaders used to cast a vision for the company. And there it is, time, money, and clients. But here was our UX strategy mistake. We pretty much just copied and pasted from our business strategy into our UX strategy, which was a little too simplistic and sort of naive. On the one hand, it was awesome because it meant that we were aligned to the business. Our new design department wasn't going off script and doing our own thing. We were clearly pursuing the same customer-focused strategic goals laid out by the business. That was great. But on the other hand, it felt like we weren't bringing anything new to the table. From an organizational standpoint, UX wasn't contributing any new thinking here. It felt like our new centralized design department was just catching up to what the organization was already focused on, rather than leading it into a new future. And this really made us very subservient to the business, in particular product management, in ways that were sometimes really limiting for design. My second reflection at the company level of strategy is that we failed to address the need for change management. And I'll use this metaphor again of the theater stage. In order to provide a good experience for the audience, you must do both tactical and strategic work within the organization behind the curtain, right? The cast and the crew have to be organized in the right way and all working together harmoniously if there's any hope of the audience enjoying the show. Well, here we were, this new group of cast members, experienced designers, surrounded by product managers and software engineers who were 15 or 20-year veteran employees of this company. And we represented change in their organization. And as a new department with a unique style of working, we encountered indifference, skepticism, sometimes outright resistance from our coworkers in other disciplines. A lot of folded arms, squinty eyes. What are those designers doing over there? This is another picture of Picasso with that pose, that attitude. He could have been one of the product owners we worked with. Don't get me wrong, some of them were very nice people, but they had expectations, and we didn't do a good enough job of understanding and negotiating some of those expectations. And we failed to recognize the need for internal change management brought on by the formation of our design group. So with a UX departmental strategy entirely focused on customer needs in front of the stage, we didn't have a game plan for winning over the hearts and minds of our coworkers who were not designers. To be effective, we had to earn their trust and their respect, and this is strategic work that we failed to do at first, and it was sometimes quite painful. A third bit of analysis at the company level: a lack of clarity around priorities. We were a team of 8 designers, and the product management group gave us this list of 54 near-term priority initiatives. This is the actual list. It was an Excel spreadsheet. This represented an enormous amount of design work. Well, we could only hope to get a fraction of this done in the time that we had. But what should we say yes to, and what do we say no to? A favorite quote of mine from Merlin Mann: "I'm staggered whenever a director level or higher executive claims they have 3, 5, 7, or 27 priorities. Because at that level, your entire career is defined by the unbelievably great ideas that you reject." And this quote became so relevant to me when I saw a group of our senior leaders, directors mostly, and vice presidents answer this question: what are the biggest roadblocks you experience when working across business units or functional groups? Their number one self-reported problem was conflicting priorities. And now that I'm working as a consultant, visiting with lots of different companies, I can say this is a very common problem, especially in larger enterprises. This is the essence of working in a large organization. If we can just get out of our own way, we might really get something cool accomplished, right? But we have conflicting priorities across the internal seams of a large company. So helping the company consistently align on specific priorities with the unique perspective that we could bring, that human-centered rationale, that's probably the most important thing we could have done to be more effective overall. And while those customer benefit missions were the right thing to do for our end users, they didn't help us with this internal organizational problem. So we've gone through 2 layers of altitude. I think that third altitude is purpose. I've already shown you the ProTax group had a purpose, a vision statement. We had a good sense of purpose, but our UX strategy didn't really engage in a complementary way at this level of purpose. In just grabbing those customer benefits and calling them our missions, we placed our focus on how to help tax preparers serve the prosperity of their clients, but we didn't engage deeply as designers with why their prosperity mattered in a broader sense. Like, why does it matter that accountants and taxpayers prosper? Who cares? Is this good for society, or are we just making a buck selling software to them? What are the moral and ethical implications if we succeed at accomplishing this vision? How do we want to see our society change? What's the philosophy here? What's the broad, long-term impact? And that's all very high concept thinking, but I'll give you 2 reasons why it matters. First, it matters in regard to innovation. There's another buzzword that needs defining. If the word strategy isn't abused enough, try innovation. But we struggled to do anything innovative. As an experienced design team, we aspired to rise above incremental product improvements and do transformational design work. In this diagram, we weren't content to simply do the run the business work at ground level down there. We wanted to take moonshots. And in retrospect, we couldn't do that because we didn't reframe design work for the business at that level of purpose. Our design strategy was only defined at a lower altitude. I'll put it another way. Our strategy asked how and what, but never why. It asked how can we help accountants save time and prosper through our product design, and what can we do in the software user experience to help accountants make a difference in the lives of their clients. Those were the missions. But we didn't have a purpose level UX strategy. Our strategy didn't speak to why. And the second reason purpose matters is summed up in a very inspirational Creative Mornings talk by Casey Gerald. Some of you, I'm sure, have seen this. If you haven't, just search for Casey Gerald Creative Mornings and watch the video. It's only about 20 minutes long. He says purpose is the new bottom line. There's a revolution in entrepreneurship among the people who are designing the next generation of enterprises. And they are more concerned with purpose, why an organization exists, than they are with merely running an organization well. If experienced designers aren't asking, what's our purpose, and designing for that, we're missing out on playing a part in a revolution whose time has come. So, that concludes my quick case study, my little recap of lessons learned in an attempt to use a mission-based user experience strategy. Now I want to pull all this together in some closing thoughts. I've been collecting different definitions of this phrase, UX strategy. Lots of different definitions from people much smarter than me. You can go to this URL if you want to read them and send me any that you'd like to add. I'm fascinated by how we're all touching different parts of this elephant, if you're familiar with that metaphor. I think some of us in the design community have a hold of the tail, some are feeling a leg or a tusk, all good perspectives. But what's the big picture of UX strategy? So I've been trying to step back and see the big picture if there is one. Tell me what you think of this. We can do strategic UX work as opposed to tactical UX work anywhere up and down this spectrum. But it's important to identify what altitude we're flying at, or you can get really confused. And we end up talking past each other as we talk about strategy. Also, your strategy can be rather incomplete if you don't address this full picture, as I just illustrated in my case study from my past experience. So here's the 3-minute sketch to define a strategic approach to UX in the enterprise. These are the elements of it. And you've got the 3 levels of altitude on the left. Product or service design is toward the bottom, then company or organizational design strategy, and that lives underneath your overarching purpose with design. On the right is sort of where your focus is as a designer. What's the subject matter of your design effort? At the product level, you're asking short-term how questions. Or how can we deliver a better user experience for this app, this product, this platform? I think most UX practitioners spend most of our time at this level. That's where most of the grunt work is, on the ground doing product design. But if I'm addressing enduring kind of purpose level strategic problems or company level concerns, and you're thinking only about product level UX, you might think what I'm saying is totally irrelevant or even nonsensical because we're at different altitudes, we're at different domains. Also, if all you focus on is doing great strategic product design, what's in the sky above you? Right? What's the atmosphere like? What is the air you're breathing? To extend this metaphor, do you have good oxygen? Right? Designers need good, clean air to breathe to think and do good product design work. So we need strategy at that company or organization level. Here you're forming medium to long-term strategies for how you do design as a function of the organization, and that can impact many products and services. You're asking questions that start with what? And here we have those two sides, right? So the outside and the inside. Outwardly, in front of the stage, what does a best-in-class user experience look like for users in this industry? Not just product design, but end-to-end customer experience. Service design thinking comes into play here. What are the broad customer benefits we're trying to deliver? Our mission-based strategy was focused on answering that question. So in this altitudes framework, that's where all the stuff we did well was most useful. It's not bad, it's just incomplete as UX strategies go. It's a piece of the puzzle, not the whole puzzle. But here's the other half. Internally, you ask questions like, what's our design team strategy in relation to the business strategy? Lots of folks I know in this sort of emerging global UX strategy community are focusing on UX strategy in that regard. But there are also other concerns, like how can we mature and grow the design practice within the company to be more effective? Does your enterprise have a maturity model for the design practice? And do you know where you are on that journey? Organizational issues like that change management I talked about, how design relates to other functions and handles the expectations and needs of other groups within the enterprise, all that stuff is here too. Design as a department and a professional practice. Finally, that purpose level at the top is the one very few of us ever aspire to. But you're asking big picture why questions. Why does this company exist? Why are we just talking about gaining revenue from customers all the time? Why can't we strive for shared value? How can we design things so that everybody wins? What's our obligation to society? That corporate purpose stuff is up here. And also from a personal introspective angle, why am I a designer? What's my professional purpose? And what's my strategy for my career? Are you spending enough time thinking about that? I don't think most of us as designers are, and I encourage you to do that. So on that note, I'll bookend my presentation by just going back to my opening question. What is your most valuable 3-minute sketch? What do you sketch as a designer to help somebody see more clearly their world and their place in it? For me right now, this is the thing that I can sketch on a whiteboard or on a napkin in about 3 minutes that helps to clarify some things with regard to enterprise UX. Does the organization have the answers we need for the hows, the whats, and the whys? This is our playing field of strategy, where we choose what to do, and just as important, what not to do. Thank you for your time.